Today, we're diving into a fascinating new kind of power, one that's bubbling up right out of Silicon Valley. And here's the twist. It isn't being won at the ballot box. Nope. It's being built piece by piece with ideology and computer code. Let's get into it.
So let's kick this off with a bombshell of a question from analyst ARA KARYAN. Is it actually possible to get real, tangible political power without ever having to win a single election? I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, right? But KARYAN argues this isn't just some hypothetical question, it's a real-world puzzle that's playing out as we speak.
Now, to really wrap our heads around this idea, we're going to need a framework, a toolkit. And for that, we're turning to the work of a Nobel laureate named Douglas North. Trust me, his ideas on how societies actually work are the perfect lens for understanding this whole power shift.
So here's the core of what North was getting at. He said that a country's success or failure doesn't really come down to its natural resources or even its technology. What really matters are the rules of the game, what he called institutions. These rules create all the incentives that push people to act in certain ways, and that basically determines everything.
So what are these institutions North is talking about? Well, he breaks them down into two main types. First, you've got the formal rules. These are the things written down, laws, constitutions. But then, and this is crucial, you've got the informal constraints, the unwritten rules like social norms, conventions, how we're all expected to behave. It's the combination of both that creates the entire playing field for a society.
So why do these rules matter so much? Well, according to North, it all boils down to something called transaction costs. Think of it like the friction in a society. It's the cost of making a deal, of enforcing a contract, of even just trusting the person you're doing business with. And when that friction is really high, it just grinds everything to a halt. Good institutions, North said, are what lower that friction and let things run smoothly.
And finally, North gives us this really powerful idea called path dependence. To put it simply, history matters. A lot. The choices a society made in the past create a certain path that's really, really hard to get off of. A society's culture, its shared memory, it all creates this powerful momentum. Now hang on to that idea, because it's going to be super important when we get back to ARA KARYAN's analysis.
Okay, so now that we've got Douglas North's framework in our back pocket, we can get back to the puzzle that ARA KARYAN laid out for us. This new political force that's emerging from Silicon Valley.
According to ARA KARYAN's analysis, the philosophical engine driving this whole movement is libertarianism, and he offers this brilliant analogy to help us understand it. He says that while traditional liberalism is focused on the health of the entire forest, the collective good, libertarianism is laser-focused on the freedom of each individual tree. To them, the sovereign individual is the only thing that matters.
And this intense focus on the individual? That's the bedrock for everything else. If we go back to Douglas North's terms, this ideology is the core, informal institution. It's the shared belief system, the unwritten rule that holds the whole movement together. Everything starts and ends with the sovereign individual.
But a philosophy is just an idea, right? How do you actually make it real? Well, ARA KARYAN argues that this particular ideology found the perfect technological vehicle to bring it to life, the architecture of Web 3.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is where philosophy literally becomes code. KARYAN argues that Web 3's architecture is a direct reflection of libertarian principles. It's decentralized by its very nature. There's no central bank, no big corporation, no government in charge. And that's not by accident. It's a deliberate design choice. The belief system is the informal rule, and the Web 3 code becomes the new formal rule, a system engineered from the ground up to pull power away from the center and give it to the individual.
Of course, ideas and technology don't just happen on their own. They need champions. And as ARA KARYAN points out, this movement is being led by some incredibly influential figures who aren't just shaping tech, they're trying to shape our entire political future.
KARYAN identifies some pretty big names you'll probably recognize, like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and David Sachs. But he makes a really critical point here. He says they aren't some perfect ideological monolith. He actually describes them more as strategic allies, who are united not so much by a rigid dogma, but by a powerful, shared goal, to fundamentally disrupt the existing system.
And according to KARYAN's analysis, their ambition goes way beyond just influencing things from the outside. We're not just talking about lobbying here. No, the real goal is a direct move from the boardroom to the cabinet room. The strategy is to integrate themselves directly into the government through high-level advisory roles to embed their worldview right at the heart of political power.
So, let's recap. We've got a powerful ideology, a technology built to serve it, and influential people pushing it all forward.
This is where it all comes together, and where we can use Douglas North's framework to really grapple with the huge question that ARA KARYAN's analysis leaves us with.
Remember that idea of path dependence from Douglas North? That history has this incredible gravity, this powerful grip, that societies have a really hard time breaking away from the tracks that were laid down by the past. Well, that's the key to this final question.
And that brings us to the ultimate question that Karyan poses. Is this rise of technopower a genuine fork in the road for humanity? A fundamental break from everything that's come before? Or, despite all the futuristic tech, are we just watching another chapter of the same old story, with old power struggles just dressed up in new digital clothes? As ARA KARYAN's analysis makes clear, the answer to that question is being written right now.